Hello my friends, this is Jeannie. Welcome back. If you're new to my channel, welcome and Happy New Year to everyone. This is my first video of 2023. I have a very long to-do list for the start of the new year. I recently created 25 ATCs as part of a countdown to Christmas. And the first thing I would like to do, since I am motivated to do it at this point, is to create a journal where I can store these ATCs. Making the journal for my ATCs, I decided that I want to do some creative recycling. I would like to recycle this Amazon packaging. I also want to use this pant leg of a pair of jeans. I would like to use some of the jean material to make the cover of the journal. And the reason I want to use is because of this. You hear that? I love that noise. It's just so squishy. This is bubble on the inside. It's so squishy and just crinkly, and I love that sound, and it's also soft. So I am interested in combining the textures of this plastic squishy bubble wrap envelope with the jeans. I also want to do a little bit of mixed media, I think, on the cover maybe, or just somewhere in this whole process. I am telling myself there's no pressure for this journal to be perfect because it is a big experiment for me. It is going to be one signature, so I don't necessarily have to worry about creating a spine, which makes this process a whole lot easier when you don't have to create a spine. And it's just a matter of finding the right folds that work for the journal. I think I want to do a little bit of sewing. I'm not sure yet. And the paper for the signatures is going to be just basic. I have some 8.5 by 11 sized papers here. These are all coffee stained, I believe. Yeah, these are coffee stained. And because I am creating the journal from scratch, what I love about that is that I get to decide what the size of the cover is going to be. And to make my life easy, I want to just take these 8.5 by 11 sheets of coffee dyed paper, fold them in half, and create a journal where it'll just fit in perfectly and I won't have to trim the paper. Also, this size works because what I am thinking is I want to create 2 pockets on each sheet, and each pocket is going to hold one of my ATCs. So I have 25 ATCs. If I'm putting 2 per page, I don't need a whole lot of pages. I think it's 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages is what I need. 6, I think, only holds 24 pockets, where 7, I'll have an extra pocket, but that's okay. So the first thing I think I need to do is square this packaging. It's a little wonky. I'm looking at it and it's actually a lot wonky. So I need to do a little bit of trimming, I think. I'm going to use my metal ruler. I'm going to use this cutting blade, and I'm going to use my mat, my cutting mat, to line up some of these edges and try to square this up. And I'm going to try to do that keeping the size of my pages in mind. First thing I want to do, I'm going to put just a little bit of glue in the center here to keep these 2 layers from moving around and shifting about while I'm cutting, I'm going to keep the glue in the center because I will, at some point in this process, sew around the edges, and I don't want to muck up my sewing machine by sewing over glue. So just in the center, nothing crazy. I'm going to use the fabric tack. Oh, I love that sound. I think I will use this edge here as a guide, and maybe what I will do, I am going to use some of my painter's tape to give it a good stick onto my mat. I'm lining it up along one of the lines on my mat. I'm going to give that a bit of a stick so we don't shift at any point. So I know this is my straight edge here. You can see, maybe you can, it might be a little out of frame, just how wonky the top and bottom edge of this envelope are. It's insane. Let me use this to kind of gauge where I want the height of the journal to be. I want it just a tiny bit bigger or taller than my sheets of paper. Not much, just the tiniest bit. So I think there and there. Now, knowing where my marks are, I might move, I am going to move the envelope so that that mark right there lines up with one of the lines on my cutting mat. Approximately. And then all I will have to do is make sure my ruler, I have an 18-inch long ruler, which is perfect for this project, lines up on the same line on my mat. Perfect. So I do want to cover of the journal with this jean material. And I think I definitely have enough material here And I think I will be okay just opening this pant leg up by cutting along the seams. I don't want these thick, heavy seams to be part of my journal. I just don't. I don't like the feel of them. I think they're going to be impossible to sew through, and I just don't like them. So I am going to cut along the seam and hope that it works out. Okay, so I have the front cover. I think that looks good. I am going to go look through my fabrics and see if I have anything that I can use for the inside. Of course I do. I know I have something. It's just a question of what. So let me go take a look and I will be right back. So I think we're going to audition some Tim Holtz fabric. And also this fabric here, don't ask me what it is. I'm sorry. I'm just not educated that way with fabric. I don't know the different fabrics. I don't know the different names for patterns on fabrics, and that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. It doesn't stop me from appreciating the beauty of fabrics and understanding how some fabrics are easier to work with than others. It's just intuitive for me. I'm certainly not an encyclopedia of knowledge, but I like this. I think this fabric will work nicely with the cover. So imagine this on one side and this on the other. What I like about this is that it picks up on the black or the dark edging that I have on all of my ATCs. Every single one of my ATCs has a very dark black border to frame them. So I think having this color on the inside of the journal will pick up on that. So there's that. I also like the pattern, and I also like the weight of the fabric. So there's that option. Then there is this option, totally different vibe. I do believe this is Tim Holtz fabric, and I have plenty of it to do the inside cover, but it totally changes the vibe of the journal, doesn't it? Right? I think it totally changes the vibe. So let's see. I would probably this would be one side, this would be the other. It's a little more grunge, I think. Definitely highlights the jean material more. Matches, but it's not super matchy-matchy. You still have that blue on blue. And I'm really loving this grunge on here because I think that picks up on the paper. Yeah? Doesn't it? Oh, I like that. So that's option number 2. Oy, I don't know. What am I going to do? This is what happens when you give yourself too many options. Let's see. Option number 3 is this fabric, which is more red. And again, totally different vibe. Creates a very different vibe with the journal. The only reason I hesitate with red is because there isn't much by way of red on any of these ATCs. But then again, if my intention is to continue to use this journal, then I shouldn't be overly concerned about the cover or the inside cover working with the ATCs that are currently in the book, right? Because that's going to be rotating. It's always going to be changing. And I think that works nice with the paper. Oh boy. So that's red. I'm leaning towards the blue. I like the blue a lot. I think that's what I'm going to do. I think this works out too because for the cover, I don't want to just leave all of this like canvas of jean material. I want to break that up, and I think I want to do that using some lace. You all know, if you've seen my vintage thrifting videos, I have this ugly gray plasticky binder filled with 100+ pieces of lace and trims. I picked this up for a whopping 20 bucks. I know, deal of a lifetime. I think I scored on this one. I think I want to use one of these pieces on the cover. Yeah. But I don't know which. I love this butterfly. But I don't think a butterfly is where I want to go. But I definitely want this lace to make its way somewhere into the project. I want to use these pieces. I don't want to just hoard them. This is a huge piece. Maybe this will work. Go over. Wow, this is a massive piece. Hold the door. Look at the size of this one. Are you my winner? Winner, winner, chicken dinner? What do we think about this piece? And there's definitely enough of it to wrap around the entire book. So if we did this piece, let's do a little rough dress rehearsal here. All right, let's assume I wrap that across the entire front cover. Layer this on top. We will go with this for the inside cover. This would be our paper. And maybe create a little pocket on the inside. What do we think? Does that work? I think that works. Okay, I think we're going to commit. Let's do it. I am going to commit. This is what I'm going to do. Oh, just occurred to me though. I did want to do a little bit of mixed media on this, but again, we can pivot. Nothing wrong with a pivot. And do I sew this onto this green material? I think maybe I do. I think maybe I do. So I think that's the plan for the cover. Yeah. I am going to sew this onto the front cover before I then sew the larger piece onto the wrapping. And then go from there. And the sewing, or at least the first part of it, is done. Here is the cover with this beautiful piece of lace sewn onto it. I do have quite a bit of excess, but that's okay. I can trim that off later. But I went with a very simple straight stitch around the entire front cover. So now I can glue this onto my cover. Let's cut a piece of this fabric for the back. I really do like this plain here, but there's no way to really place it where it doesn't get chopped off or you don't really notice it. I think this area here is where we want to go. I like the numbers. So we are going to cut ourselves some fabric here. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and glue this onto the back and then do some more stitching. I'm going to put some glue in the center and I am going to spread it because I don't want globs of glue that will soak through and leave stains on the fabric. So this is going to be a little messy, but it's totally worth it. Wow, can you hear my husband upstairs? So he wears a hearing aid, and because he wears a hearing aid, he speaks really loud, and he doesn't realize that he does. You would think wearing a hearing aid, you would just speak normal tone, because you have a hearing aid, right? It's supposed to aid your hearing. But I find that since his hearing aid, he speaks really loud. I don't know why that is. I've pointed it out to him a few times and he thinks I'm crazy. But I can hear him. There's a floor between us and I can hear him speaking upstairs. Oh, for a moment I thought I glued that on upside down. Holy cow. Okay, so let's start some training here. Start training this cover to fold where I want it to fold and not where it wants to fold. Okay, so I think the next step is more sewing. I'm going to sew around the edges again, sewing all of these layers together, and then I will come back and do some trimming, and I think the cover will be done. So let me do some sewing and I'll be right back. This is the cover after I trimmed off some of the excess fabrics, and then I went around the entire cover twice with a zigzag stitch. And the reason I did that is because my stitching is so wonky, it's never straight. So instead of fighting that, I just embrace it. And I find if I go around the cover twice, it tends to cover up the wonkiness of my stitching. So again, I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to embrace it. It's part of my projects. So it is what it is. This is what it looks like, and I think it looks good. I love the rough edges. I love the stitching. I love just everything about it so far. I love that it's squishy and it's so soft. It's the perfect size. I don't have to cut any of my paper. And I thought I would be done. But I need to break this up a little in the front. I think this is too much. Too much of this material. I think it's a little plain. I think it's a little boring. Don't get me wrong. I love the whole clean and simple. I embrace that aesthetic. That is my aesthetic. But sometimes I think it's a little too simple, and this needs a little something. And I started thinking, I have a couple of my ATCs that are my absolute favorites in that series I did, the 25 or the ATC countdown to Christmas. Absolutely love these two, and I thought I would feature them, or at least one of them. At first I thought two, but I think two might be a little too much. I think one. And if I had to choose one, this is my ultimate favorite one right here. I am going to put this on my cover. And I need to frame this so that it pops a little from the background. So I had some extra jean material, some scraps. I cut one to bigger than the ATC, and then I used the zigzag stitch to create a border, because now I have to glue this onto the book. I didn't think that far ahead, where had I done that, maybe I would have sewn it onto the cover, the front cover, before I glued it on. But again, this is another pivot, so we're going to make it work though. I created the stitch, or I did the stitch on that fabric, so even when I glue it on, it'll look like it's been sewn on. And only you and I will know that it's not. Shh, don't tell anyone. Nobody needs to know. Then what I will do is glue the ATC onto the fabric, and I think that does a pretty good job of breaking up the front here. Then I was thinking I want something down here now to kind of balance this out. And I remembered that I had these book plates, or I don't know, are they called book plates? What are they called? These things. And I thought something like this underneath, but framed with this same blue fabric, and maybe in here it will say ATC. Then I was looking at this because, you know, I was auditioning all of this, and I started thinking, boy, this layout looks kind of familiar, Jeannie. Have you done this before? So I paused. I went and looked at my other journals, my recent makes. And yeah, I have. And I just have to share it with you because I got a good giggle out of it. Apparently, when it comes to journals, I have a type. So let me share with you what my type is. So here is a journal that I made for my Your Creative Studio unboxing series. Check out the front. Frame up here with something in the center and that same plate, and this time the word create. But it doesn't stop there. Here's my Halloween, my boho Halloween journal, right? Look familiar? So apparently that layout, that look is so pleasing to my eyes that I use it a lot. So there, that is my type. I have a type when it comes to journals, and that is my type. I just had to share that with you because sometimes you don't realize that you do the same things over and over and again in some variation. You don't realize you're doing it until something just triggers the need to, let me look at my past journals and compare them to this journal. So I try to do something different with every journal that I make, but apparently there's some themes that repeat themselves, and I'm okay with that because it makes me happy. And I thought you would get a chuckle out of that, same way I did. So I'm going to do that for this journal. I am going to go ahead and I think make this the focal image for the front. And we're going to cut this down because this is a lot of materials. I think I want just enough to frame this plate, whatever it's called, and glue it on. Do I want to attempt a zigzag stitch on such a tiny piece of fabric? Oh, heck no. We're going to pass on that. I think that's going to make me crazy. So we're just going to leave it at that. So I can see the canvas from where I'm sitting, but I'm going to have to step away from my desk to grab the canvas. So I'll be right back. I changed my mind about the canvas. I got the canvas. I auditioned it with the cover and I didn't like it. And I think what was throwing me off about the canvas on this particular cover is that the canvas is not a pure white. It's an off-white, kind of like a bone, yellowy kind of color. This is bright white. I didn't like the look of that canvas against this particular material. So I went into my scrap box and I have this heavyweight piece of cardstock. I am going to use my stamp, I think this is like some kind of clickable alphabet stamp. All the pieces click together. And I think I have 2 sets here, upper and lower case, maybe 3, because I might have gotten the special characters as well. But I got this off Amazon. I will try to link it down below so you can check it out if that's something you might be interested in. But what I'm going to do is I have an A, a T, and a C right here. And I am going to stamp this onto this cardstock several times because I'm sure it will take a few tries before I get a nice clean impression that I'm happy with. And then I'm going to heat emboss it in black. So you would think, knowing that, I would have pulled the ink and the embossing powder, but I didn't. Good gracious. Oh, this is why it takes me forever to finish something. Okay, let me grab that stuff. Okay, so let me clarify because I don't think I was very clear. When I said I would heat emboss it in black, that's not to mean I'm going to use black embossing powder. Black embossing powder is my menace because inevitably, no matter how careful you are with prepping the surface, you're going to have little flecks of that black embossing powder in places you might not necessarily want, and it just looks messy. So I don't use black embossing powder. What I do is I stamp in black ink and then use clear embossing powder on top of that ink to get that embossing effect, but I'm using clear as opposed to that drive you crazy black. So I use an ink that stays wet just long enough to get that clear embossing powder to stick. I use archival ink. Find a relatively clean spot on this. So I use a powder static type tool just to get any, just prep the surface so that the embossing powder will stick only where I want to. Though truthfully, in this case, it really doesn't matter because, you know, it's clear. But, you know, good habits. Here's my ATC, my archival ink. And I'm going to do this is why I do several stamps. Oh, that's a good one. Then you want to quickly there is the ATC, nicely embossed. Get a pencil, mark that about where I need to cut it. I think that looks good, and I think that works better with the cover. So I need to just clean up here a little bit, and then I'll come back and we can wrap up the cover, and I think that'll be all for this video. I'm going to place some more glue, and I'm not going to go to the edge of the fabric here. I want the edges to kind of lift a little to play into that whole it's stitched on effect. If the edges just lift a tiny bit, then it will look like it's sewn on. I think now the cover is finished. That looks infinitely better. You can still see and appreciate that beautiful lace in the background, but it's not a huge block of it. And I think this is still a very clean look, but a more interesting look. And my favorite ATC is permanently on display on the cover. I think it turned out really nice. This is the front. Here's the back. Maybe I'll add a pocket onto this. I don't know. I'll give that some thought. Fits the paper quite nicely. So I think in the next video, I will be able to wrap this up. I have to think about a closure. I never think about the closure in the beginning. I should try to do that, because if I do that, then maybe I could have taken a strip of something and sewn it between the layers and just have a little tie thing here. And every time I start a journal, it's with the intent of add the closure to the list of things you need to take into consideration in the beginning, but somehow that just slips my mind. It's something that my mind just won't register. So I will have to figure out a closure. Maybe just a couple of eyelets and some beautiful sari silk here. I don't know. I'll give it some thought. That's certainly the simplest thing to do. So I think that is going to do it for this video, my friends. This is a good spot to stop. And we will pick up this project and complete it in the next video. And then onward to my Girl Scout projects. That. I will catch you all in my next video, my friends. Until next time. Bye-bye.